Hello, everyone. I'm Nikhil Jain, and I'm going to be your host today for the Mentor Conference. And today is the last day of the pre conference. Okay. So, a lot of things that we have discussed in the last 4 to 5 days in the pre conference, we came across product management mentor who guided us about, tech to non tech folks getting into product management. At the same time, we kind of got into FANG companies, how the hirings happen in the FANG companies, and then we learned a little bit more about the media studies in Australia and how international students can get into media studies. Okay. And lastly, we also learned about aerospace engineering, European education, TU Delft, Netherlands. All of this have probably made you more excited to learn more about higher education. But today, it's not just about higher education. Today is a very special day, and we have an amazingly special mentor on the panel. Okay, I'm going to introduce a little bit about him, but let me first tell you, today's session is going to be on something more related to visa, something more related to your academics, something more related to your profile building, and the speaker is going to help you understand how these things matter and how can you get an alternative route to the regular visas in US. Okay, we all know H1B, F1, green cards in US are very difficult to get nowadays. Okay, apart from the postgrad visa. So how do we look at that, and what are the other alternative options to go for a US visa? A lot of things are going to be there, but before that, let me introduce to you some of the really amazing insights that our team has put up for you. Okay, what we do at Foreign Admits, how Foreign Admits is going to help you to get to your dream university. So let me play a very quick video for you. So yes, we organize workshops, we organize mentorship session, and a lot of things. Okay, and in this conference, as we promised, we are going to launch amazing scholarship that helps you dream bigger and go and achieve your dreams. Okay, and the scholarship is named exactly on that. Can you guess the name? Let's see the video. Okay, so you all know what I'm talking about. It's a Dream Big scholarship of up to $1 million of funding, and everyone can get an assured scholarship, minimum 500 to maximum, I don't know how much can you get. So yes, without waiting further, let me introduce you to the new speaker for today, who is an Einstein Visa holder. When we talk about Einstein Visa, yes, that is one of the most reputed visa category in US. The other people that would have gotten Einstein Visa, do you know anyone? From my knowledge, Melania Trump had also gotten an Einstein visa. It has multiple visa categories, Pulitzer Prize holder, Oscar awardee, and such kind of people have gotten Einstein visa in past. But yes, there is a chance that this Indian grad had gotten an Einstein visa, and he's going to share his journey, the tips, the processes, so that you can also get an Einstein visa too. And yes, let me introduce you to Mr. Saiman Shetty to the conference. Hi, Simon.
Hey, Nikhil, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Doing good. Thanks for putting this up. This is awesome.
Absolutely, everything for the audience. So, Simon, before we go, into the Einstein visa and all those things, let's, tell audience about you. Where do you come from? What was your background in India? From India to US and the new, Einstein visa. So it's a long journey, right? So let's user understand, how they can relate to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I went to undergrad in India, in coastal Karnataka, basically. I did my electrical engineering there. Ever since I was in undergrad, I developed an interest for control systems in general. And I applied to a bunch of schools. And back then back then meaning around 5-6 years ago, it was the number of people sort of coming to the US was relatively lower than now, at least. And yeah, I applied for control systems, got into Arizona State, went to grad school there for a couple of years. Then I started my career as a controls engineer in a company in Atlanta. Worked for about a year in Atlanta for a couple small businesses, and then moved to Silicon Valley to work for Tesla. And I worked at Tesla as a controls engineer. I built robots that helped to make the vehicles. And then I moved on to this other American rideshare company called Lyft, where I was helping build autonomous vehicles from the ground up, from the design stage onwards. And then since then, I worked there for a couple of years and moved on to another cool robotics startup called Neuro. So this has basically been my journey. Along the way, I have also founded a couple companies. One in the space of waste management IoT, and then another in the space of like resume building and making sure people have a robust tool to build like really good resumes without having to go through the hustle of formatting and stuff like that. So overall, that's
Interesting.
basically been my journey. Pretty exciting journey.
Absolutely. I think from ASU to your startup and then to Tesla, Neuro, Lyft, and I think you're currently at Neuro, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then let's understand a little bit about your undergrad journey. How was your undergrad journey? What kind of college were you in? If you can name the college also, what kind of
Mhm.
field you were in, and then when did you plan for your US studies?
Yeah, so I in undergrad I went to a college in coastal Karnataka called NMAM Institute of Technology. It's in a small town called Nitte in Udupi district, and over there. So one thing I can recall vividly of my entire undergrad journey. Obviously, I can't remember a lot of what happened in the classes and everything like that. But one thing that I can remember vividly was that I was pretty active in these competitions and being active in some bare research that I could like get my hands on, kind of thing. Obviously, in colleges that are not IITs or NITs or some of the other top tier colleges in India, there's not a ton of research that goes on, right? And you'll have to sort of work your way into being interested in some form of research and then be indulged in it, ask professors to like support you, and it's going to be a relatively uphill battle than the other schools. So yeah, I mean, naturally I developed an interest for researching, writing papers, and then presenting them in different competitions, paper presentation competitions and stuff like that. Won a few of them, and then I realized, okay, yeah, this is something exciting. Let's build something cool. So back in college, me and a few friends, we got together and built a Tesla coil, which is like a super high voltage device, and it was pretty risky adventure back then, but one thing led to the other, and by the end of those 4 years, it was a pretty good journey where there's all these like disparate things that we've done apart from the actual classes which everyone does, which really added to the memories. And now several years down the line, when I think back, those memories that like really make me happy.
Absolutely. I think this is really inspiring because a lot of people have this misconception that I can go to US or any top university if I come from any of the elite institutions. And you, my friend, yeah, definitely is the live example that tables have turned and you just got to be focused and working around. Okay. So talking about Indian University to Arizona State University, how was the transition? How did you get in? What was your 2 years of university experience and what value ASU added? I'm sure ASU has tons of things to offer because I particularly have spoken to a lot of people at ASU. So let's understand from you directly.
Yeah, so I throughout, I think around the second year of my undergrad, I was trying to think about, okay, what do I do after like my undergrad is over and stuff like that, right? So there were two different paths that I could like notionally think of. One was something, move ahead and do a master's in India, and then the other one was move ahead and do a master's abroad. uh, uh, in order to get into, like, let's say the NITs or IITs in India, technically I realized that, okay, you have to really crack this exam that is like entirely merit based. So kind of no matter what I did in my sort of extracurricular activities and all these all this other type of hustling that I talked about, right? It wouldn't necessarily matter to get into IITs or NITs, and that was a tipping point for me, because my academically I was not I didn't like the concept of exams really. And I still don't believe that that's an effective way of like coming up with a metric to judge people's abilities. But anyway, that's a topic for a different day. So then I started thinking about, okay, what is it that what is it that I can do, where is it that I can go, that has better that admits people based on their overall sort of competencies, right? And then obviously the best group of universities that admit people based on their overall competencies is the US. And there are a few other countries, of course, but that's where I really started looking into like US universities, and that's what struck me. I mean, I kind of developed an interest in control systems. The reason being that I liked being fairly general. So anything that I worked on, I'd like those sets of skills, right, to be transferable to different roles, right? For example, in control systems, it's like relatively mathematical and physical, and it also has like a lot of other elements in it that makes it very attractive, that you can take the concepts of control systems and apply it into like aerospace, you can apply it into mechanical engineering, you can apply it into electrical engineering, you can also apply it on Wall Street for finance stuff, right? So this transferability of skills really interested me, and that's why since my second year of undergrad, I started like tinkering with and developing an interest for control systems. And I realized that fact when using control systems, I was an electrical engineering major, but I would participate in competitions in mechanical engineering and biotech engineering and stuff like that. And I would win, right? Because there's this control systems concept that I would cookie cutter across. So that's where I realized, okay, control systems is actually working out for me. And I went ahead, applied to I think 5 universities, which had like good controls programs. And I got into like two of them, Arizona State being one of them, and I think some university in Colorado, I think, being the second one. And yeah, came to ASU. When I landed at ASU, the first thing, it was full of enthusiasm till that point. But then when I landed in a country different from where I came, it immediately struck me that, oh God, what have I done, right? Like it's a complete culture shock. It's like the world has turned upside down. I don't know a single human here. None of my family members had sort of set foot in the US at all. So basically zero, no human at all. All my friends and family are blessed, left behind and come here, right? So but the controls program at the ASU was pretty robust, right? And I kind of really developed this interest in, okay, so there's all these controls that's being taught in the classes, but then apart from this, there are so many other areas that I can sort of focus on and also like gain knowledge in. Even the practical side, right? There's the business school where a lot of business courses are taught. So I just dropped into a few business classes just randomly to just absorb all the information or knowledge I can. And then there's the entrepreneurship competition and stuff like that I avidly participated in. So I kept myself really busy, doing nothing extraordinary, but all the things that are available to me really well. And that's how especially ASU offers a lot of opportunities, and over the years I've seen that even other universities offer a lot of opportunities when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to active research, when it comes to like keeping the students and associates of involved in the community. I've seen a lot. So ASU in specific for controls, I can never forget one of my professors over there, called Armando Rodriguez, and he was probably the main reason why I joined ASU. He came from a very he came from a very humble background, and then sort of worked his way up into MIT, got his PhD there, and then started teaching. And he has this art. It's one thing to be really good at what you're doing, and then it's the other thing to be a great educator, right? There are people who are really good at their craft who fail at educating people because they just don't have that knack. This person was one of those rare people who had the best of both worlds, right? He would have this abundance of knowledge. He got I think the presidential medal for excellence in teaching science, technology, engineering, and math from President Clinton back in the day. So he's a pretty accomplished man, but when he walked into the class, he walked in soccer wear, and then he would make the concepts really simple and digestible. He was a pretty cool guy, and he was the one that sort of kept me really going and really inspired. So ASU was good. A lot of like on-campus job opportunities if you're looking that way. If you want to like push forth for assistantships and stuff like that, which becomes important down the line. Great for that as well. So yeah, overall ASU was like a good experience.
Interesting. So let's understand now, from ASU, how did the job transition happen? You definitely got into one of the big companies, so how did you prepare for it? What was the planning around that?
So one of the things that happened though is the moment I landed at ASU, there's a lot of people who, control systems as a specialization doesn't necessarily have the reputation of, being immediately job ready for some reason. And the main reason, like I sort of got to know from people after landing, after choosing control systems, getting admitted and landing, right, is that control systems has like relatively lesser job opportunities for the following reasons. One is a lot of jobs in control systems are sort of export control, regulated, which means they are in like aerospace or defense and these kinds of areas, which are mostly available only for citizens and permanent residents, right? So that's one. And then the second thing is, in general, the now with the advent of self-driving vehicles and all of that, there's a lot of more jobs being created in control systems. But like 4 years ago, when all this was like in its primitive stage, there was not much actual demand for controls outside of aerospace and such things, and very niche areas when it comes to computational mathematics and those areas. So I was in a sort of a demotivated scenario from day one about like the whole job hunt scenario thing. At times I doubted myself, saying, hey, should I actually be pursuing controls or should I switch? But this is something I only ever liked doing, so I continued doing that. When it comes to transitioning to jobs, right, this demotivation from the beginning, this lack of motivation, really helped me sort of design an experiment in my head, saying, okay, so if I am not able to get a job, let me realize that, or let me really test the market out and know that for sure years, probably a year in advance, right, rather than like graduating and then applying and knowing. So that's the reason I started pretty early applying for jobs. I applied like rigorously, got rejected from a ton of places, of course, and that's the journey that everyone sort of takes, getting rejected by thousands of people. At one point, my daily schedule was like wake up, apply, like eat, sleep, repeat, right? Because I wanted to literally apply to every job on the internet and see if what people are telling is true, right? And to a certain extent it was, because there are so many. There was one big company that sort of approached, interviewed, and then completely disappeared, like no sign. It's not even like, hey, okay, we are not moving forward, nothing like that. And that happens sometimes. And then there was another small business that got up to the stage of the offer, and then they realized that they have trouble sponsoring international students, and then they like took back the offer and stuff like that, right? So here I am, like having an offer in hand, and then the offer being taken away. So it's like all levels of drama uh, had to be faced there. And then like there was one company in Atlanta that eventually was like, hey, we have an offer for you, but we want you to move immediately. So I started working as a result of them needing that real, a real quick talent. I moved, and I started working for them much sooner than I graduated. So I started working almost a year before I graduated for that company. Right. So I basically, in my head, this experiment of let me see and test the market out and see if what people are telling true helped me convert sort of this opportunity where I really accelerated my transition into the industry, versus if I really fell into what people around me were talking about and just delayed everything in light of hopelessness. So yeah, I think it was a pretty adventurous journey looking back. But look, like at that time, looking forward, probably I would never have realized that it would turn this way.
Interesting. I think yes, not paying attention to a lot of people sometimes help when you're focused. So let's understand. You had been into predominantly into mobility space, if I'm terming it right. Tesla, Neuro, Lyft. So what's your take around that space a little bit, and then we move to the bigger question here.
Yeah. So in general, right, I think the opinion about this space has been evolving with the space itself, right? Now I'm in the sweet intersection of two spaces actually, and two revolutions that are actually happening in the world today. One is autonomous driving and self-driving, right? That's one. The second is electrification and electric transport. Those are two separate concepts happening together right now in the world, right? There are some vehicles that are becoming autonomous but not electric. There are some electric but not autonomous, and then there are some that are fusing both and making like an electric autonomous vehicle, which is like challenge squared, right? So I think in general this space, there's a lot of investment going on in the electric vehicle space as well as the autonomous vehicle space. I think it should be pretty clear to the industry by now that the future is going to be electric. Like probably 3-4 years ago there was a doubt about it, but now no, there's pretty much no doubt about it. So I don't know what that means to jobs that are sort of more petrochemical related and fuel burning type vehicle related. But in general, I think there's a huge transition going on about not just converting vehicles into electric, but also the way humans transport themselves, right? Should you actually need to own a car, or can we get rid of the whole car ownership model and have mobility so affordable that it is accessible to all, and everyone is able to leverage this mass transit sort of scenario. So a lot of like changes are going on with Uber doing what they're doing, Lyft doing what they're doing, people like Tesla also expressing interest in coming into the sort of Tesla network, robo taxi space. It's really interesting. I would say this is the most interesting time to be working on self-driving vehicles.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the audience is pretty much ready to know about your journey. How did you realize that this is the kind of visa type that you should be going compared to H1 visa and other visa types that you have? Can you help first audience understand what are the kind of visas that they get after their postgrad, and what kind of merits did you see in this visa, and how did you go about that?
Yeah. So in general, right? Uh, let me just talk about what why this visa, why this type of green card, and also visa connected with it exists in the first place, right? And also, like, I'd like to make this very clear that I'm not an attorney myself, so I'm not an immigration lawyer, nothing like that. I can't represent anyone. This is not even legal advice. This is more of what has worked for me and experience based stuff. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that nobody takes it as like official legal advice, because I need to legally put that disclaimer out. But anyway,
Yeah.
from my experience, after you graduate, you need to get on some sort of like a status to work on. You have the OPT, and then you have to like transition yourself into some status to become eligible to work in the US for longer, right? That's the way it works. The most frequent route that people take is the H-1B, right? And mainly H-1B depends on the employer to actually sponsor. So you need to get a job, and the employer sponsors, and then you sort of get picked in a random lottery, which again is like pretty challenging. And I think the odds are now like one in three, or one in it was 1 in 2. I think now it's 1 in 3. And it's pretty highly contested, pretty highly politically debated, and whatnot. It's all visible out there, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I was sort of working at Tesla, and there was when they applied for my sort of H-1B for the first time, it didn't get picked in the lottery, and I was sort of surprised about the whole process as well. I mean, it was not unexpected, but the fact that you have a certain amount of profile that you think is sufficient to get like a visa if it were merit based, and then I need to get lucky in a lottery, did not really it didn't entirely make sense to like what I was doing and what other applicants in the H-1B lottery were doing, and when I compared profiles and stuff like that. So that's when I realized, okay, so is there any route that is like more merit based, right? And does not need heavy dependence on a lottery. And that's when I realized this class of visas for aliens of extraordinary ability, right? And one of that class is like the O1A visa, which is basically like a non-immigrant temporary visa, 3 years and then renewable kind of thing, which is meant for people with extraordinary ability. And then there is a set of this class of green cards called EB1A, right? And that is also meant for aliens of extraordinary ability. The unique thing about EB1A that is really that really makes it interesting as an option is that you don't need a sponsor. You can apply yourself and argue based on the merits of your case, show your achievements, and get that green card. And the wait for that is significantly lower. So people born in India usually end up waiting, I don't know now, for like 20 years or something like that for a green card. That's because they are applying for the EB2 or EB3 visas, right? Which is employment-based second preference or employment-based third preference. And they end up needing their employers to sponsor, and all these hoops. EB1A is employment-based first preference. So the US has a quota of green cards they give away, right, every year, and that is congressionally sort of limited. They can't give away more than that number of green cards per year. So when they decide, they finish the family-based, and when they come to the employment-based visas, what they do is they now have to decide, right, who gets how much, right? So they first go to the EB1 category and look at, okay, so how many applicants are there? There's a little bit of like more complex math that goes on per country quota and stuff like that. But they look at that entire pool and they go, okay, so this is the amount of green cards I'm going to give in the EB1. And then everything that is sort of left, I move on to EB2, and then I move on to EB3, and then down the line, right? So because EB1 gets like the first preference, your chances are very high. And I think the wait time recently have increased a little bit for people born in India, but it's definitely not 20 years. It's like I think now it's around like 2 years. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it became really interesting how like now finally there's like I mean, in my realization, there was this class of green cards, a set of visas that are purely merit based. And then I looked at all the qualifying criteria that I need to qualify for it, right? And when I objectively analyzed it, it seemed like a lot of things that I did in grad school and undergrad kind of mattered there, right? And also like by that time I had like, even in my work and through my work and stuff like that, I had gathered, and the startup, I had gathered a lot of other sort of exposures when it comes to satisfying those criteria. But I was not entirely there yet. So what I did was for about 6 months to a year, I completely worked hard on like gathering the evidence and building a profile, completing the profile that I had already been unknowingly building, um, to qualify for this visa, right? So for 1 year I looked at, okay, what gaps are there in this, how can I fill this, and then I started like really I don't probably I got very less sleep that 1 year. I literally worked that hard, and then filed for the EB1A, or the Einstein Visa as it is called. And then yeah, one thing led to the other, and a year and a half later, I have the green card. So it's been an interesting immigration journey. Back then, when I was first looking at this, I was looking at other people who got it, and I was looking at like, you know, celebrities and Olympic medalists and Nobel Prize winners, and stuff like that. And then it was intimidating to me. I was like, okay, probably this is not meant for me. But then, you know, there are like good attorneys that kind of, you know, were advising me on like the other candidates they filed it for and stuff like that. And at some point along the way, it kind of became a little I kind of, you know, grew into the confidence that, okay, maybe I have a chance. And then I put my weight behind it. I really worked hard for a year or so in a very directional manner, right? That's the most important thing. You need to work in a very sort of strategic and directional manner, and then applied, and it turned out to be successful.
Interesting. So let's understand from the student's perspective, or working professional perspective. So do you want to say that it could be thought upon by the students who are even going for undergrad there, or it's only for the working professionals who are just going for the grads and going for the visas?
Not yeah, not necessarily, because the you can, I would say, more than 50% of the exposure that you need, right, to make the right connections, to build the right profile for the Einstein visa, a ton of those exist right in front of you in grad school, right in front of you in undergrad. It's about knowing what those are and how you can be strategic in taking action, right? And I'm not saying like taking action just because I'm going to get a green card in the future, that kind of thing, right? I'm saying taking deliberate action to legitimately build your profile to that level, right? And those opportunities are right in front of you all the while. Now when I look back, I didn't know that, like looking forward, now when I look back, there's a ton of all these opportunities that I actually used in grad school and undergrad, as well as a few more I thought I could have used, which I sort of didn't realize back then, right? All these exist, and it is about, I was basically like thinking about this the other day. What's the worst that could happen, right? You still have an awesome profile that, you know, industry will come after. If you're an undergrad, then if you want to go to grad school, you can put it on your SOP and in your profile, and a lot of universities will take interest in such profiles. So there is nothing to go wrong about this, by, you know, sort of using up all those opportunities, and building that profile, and eventually, of course, it'll help for a green card.
Interesting. Okay, so we have few questions before we move ahead. Let's take up a couple of questions from the students. Okay,
Mhm.
so these are, I feel some of them might be a little bit generic questions. Okay,
Mhm.
so how did you decide US compared to the other countries?
Yeah, so there were actually a few factors here. One, I think education is pretty flexible in other countries as well. But one thing that kind of really struck me about the US was the fact that you could choose the courses that you take, right? And I think you can take it in other countries as well. So that was, but US was, I was so naive back then. The US was the only country I thought that did this. Okay, so that's why, that was the first striking point, although it kind of seems a little uninformed. But the second striking point was I was big into like aerospace, and I like flying stuff, and like things like that. So inevitably, I think with top aerospace companies in the US was an attractive option in that regard. And yeah.
Interesting. So the second question is again a very typical question: how much coding is knowledge is required if you're going for control systems and similar fields?
Uh, I wouldn't say much, right? You don't. So coding becomes necessary when you're trying to implement and realize a certain concept, right? So you have a certain algorithm or approach of doing things. You have a certain mathematical model of, like, implementing controls, let's say. And then coding becomes important, and also it is very case by case based, right? Like, where are you implementing it? Are you implementing control systems, let's say, on a self-driving vehicle on a much higher level in the stack, or are you looking to sort of realize those control systems in like the base vehicle layer? So are you going to do like firmware, or are you going to do like a higher level sort of more computational stuff? All these questions sort of arise, and depending on where you sit in that equation, you will have to learn like different type of coding. But in essence, knowing coding without knowing the broader aspect of implementing things, or what you are implementing, there is no use that coding can deliver. So I have seen people, in my journey, where they didn't know coding, but they were really solid in like the concepts that they needed to implement, and then they adapted. Coding is like a language. You just learn whatever platform you want to implement it on. You learn the language of that platform and then implement it on it. Versus learning coding and then hoping to do controls is like putting the cart before the horse. Yeah.
Yep. So I think this is one. So this is again one of the questions related to autonomous vehicles. Since you've been into the three companies on that,
Mhm.
so which country do you feel is best for autonomous systems currently? Like, is there a comparison around it that you can draw a line on?
uh, I'm I am pretty, and maybe it's because I'm a little biased here, but I think when it comes to autonomous systems on vehicles is concerned, the US is doing much better work than European companies when it comes to that. And the reason is that self-driving, for the most part, was is born as a product of Silicon Valley stuff, right? I'm not saying entirely, of course not, but a lot of self-driving companies started from Silicon Valley, because and the head start they got was because of to to build traditional automotive vehicles like internal combustion engine vehicles and stuff like that. You need to have a certain amount of like mechanical, how things work, kind of expertise. But then to build a self-driving vehicle, you need a computational expertise and like a computer science expertise to go with, and then all these other things sort of fill into it. So that kind of talent always existed in Silicon Valley, and that's the reason the birth, pretty much, autonomous vehicles mostly took birth in Silicon Valley in an implementable level, right? And that's why I would say the US is a great place for autonomous vehicles work, and stuff like that. The other place I think would be China, where they are making a lot of progress on such things. But yeah, I mean, I think looking at the broader options that people usually consider for their higher education, it would be the US.
Okay. So this is a very student, like international student concerned question. So
Mhm.
probably you might relate to it also. So what are the job prospects after MS? How many months does it take to get a job?
So, if I share my experience, uh, if you ask me how many months did it take me after my MS to get a job, I would say -5, because I started working 5 months before I graduated. So I think, but at the end of the day, right? I'm trying to give a useful response here. At the end of the day, it matters on how you build your profile, how you make yourself attractive, how you really knock on all doors of opportunity you possibly have. And I think even now, more than ever, I think the US is the land of opportunity. And like, you will this is what a lot of people keep asking me such things, and the one standard answer I sort of give is, you will definitely get a job or be able to uh, 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 build your career and build a life, if you work hard enough. It's not like a free give all sort of society. It's more of, you can be guaranteed pretty much that the harder you work, the rewards you get are proportionate to that, which in unfortunately, in many societies in the world, in different continents, is not the case. There is a limit where you hit, and then the harder you work, you just keep throttling yourself, and it doesn't move, right? So I think the
Yeah.
US is different from that. It's the results that you get for yourself and in general, for the community around you, are directly proportionate to the amount of smart work that you put in.
Interesting. So I think it's more about the ROI aspect that US definitely has. It depends how much one is willing to put in.
Mhm.
So we have one very interesting question. Like apart from EB-1A visa, are there any such special category visa a student can apply if they're targeting an undergrad or a grad program?
So, um, such special category, I'm not entirely sure what this means, but if the question is sort of talking about something that has like similar qualifications necessary as EB-1A, but is different, right? Yeah, like I mentioned, there's the O1 visa, right? The biggest difference between those two are that EB-1A is a green card, which offers permanent residency, or what they call an immigrant visa. And the O1A is more like an H1B, but then more merit driven H1B, right? That does not have the lottery, but you build a profile and apply for that, and then you get it. But the key difference here is that the EB-1A does require a slightly higher burden of proof, I think, but it does not need sponsorship, right? You doesn't necessarily need sponsor, so you can write a case and submit. Or the O1A requires you to have an employer, requires you to have a job, and then the employer needs to sponsor you for the O1 visa. So there is a level of dependency there. Plus, it is not permanent; it's a temporary sort of work visa, right? The other thing here is that the EB-1A is a category of visa where you don't even need to have a job in the first place, right? So you argue based on the merits of everything that you have done, and you don't need a job offer, you don't need a sponsor, which means you also don't need to go through the extra hoops of labor certification. And usually when companies file for EB-2 and other types of green cards or visas, even H1B for that matter, what they have to do is they have to sort of initially prove to the Department of Labor that they did not get any other US person to fill the position. So for that, they need to like advertise, wait for it, interview a bunch of people. So this is all part of like the process they take in order to even file a green card, right? But even EB-1A doesn't need all that. The government doesn't need you to prove that there's no other person to fill that ability and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what makes
Interesting.
it attractive. Yeah.
Okay, so one very interesting question is coming, and I think this is kind of a question for a lot of Indians and Southeast Asians. It's about the funding aspects. Someone is asked how to study abroad in a country when I have not much amount of fees to cover any of the US universities requirement. So, how did you plan for your funding, and what's your journey around that?
So I believe the question here is that there's not much funds to afford a US education and how to go about that, right? So
Yeah.
the best way over here, I think, or like the most realistic way over here, I think, is like use some sort of leverage, like some sort of loan or something. But anyone can give that response, so I'm not going that down that route. Uh, Apart from that, if you build a good profile from undergrad, again goes back to that profile building and what I talked about, right? Like, so
Yeah.
if you build that in a strategic and sensible manner, what you can do is, starting earlier on in your undergrad, you can reach out to a lot of professors in grad schools, right? And need not be like top-notch grad schools like MIT or Stanford. It can be like literally any grad school. Just start building that relationship. Of course, professors are hard to come by, especially when you're outside the US. It's hard to get a response from them even,
Yeah.
right? So, but it's easy to access their emails. It's all on the website, right? So it's hard to get a response, and I'm telling you, you probably get a less than 1% response rate from professors. Be
Yes.
prepared for that. But make your sort of sample set that huge that even the 1% response you get might produce a result, right? And then start talking to them about research. Start showing them all the work that you did from a research standpoint, and from a like sort of an undergrad involvement standpoint and stuff like that. Once you really start building that rapport up, you warm them up to the possibility of being like, hey, I like this person, I'd like this person to be my teaching assistant or research assistant. And then by the time you apply, you already know the professor. You can mention the professor's name in the SOP and whatnot, and then the professor will recommend like a teaching assistant position, and then that way you can get a few free tuition rider. So this is one way. Of course, it does take a lot of hard work, but that's what makes it available to you, right? Because it takes a lot of hard work. Not other people are doing that. uh,
Yeah.
and those are the opportunities that are like wide open.
Yes. I think you said it very correctly. A lot of people who don't go via the loan route, and something even I did it when I got my full funding, you spend a lot of time in building a rapport with the professor. You do read a lot of research paper, you do research about the professors or the universities where you want to go. And
Yeah.
then once you write an email, you have substantial amount of information to write in those cover letters. And it doesn't look like a copy paste cover letters and a copy paste SOP on that note.
Yep.
So for everyone who are there and who are looking for like a free education or like a full sponsorship or a full scholarship, yes, it is available. There are a lot of mentors who can give you live testimony to it, but then hard work is the price that you have to pay, and time, hard work, patience, you have to do it. Else, bank loan is the easiest route. You can always go for it. A lot of people go and they still are able to make out. So talking about the bank loans and the ROI aspect, could you also shed some light about the what kind of salaries that people look at? You don't have to disclose yours, but you can always probably mention around the ranges. And is there a payback period that people can also look at it?
It depends on what your loan amount is, what how expensive a school you went to, how lavishly you led your college life, right? There's a lot of moving parts here and variables here, and different industries pay very differently,
Mhm.
right? When it comes to, unfortunately, there's like a huge pay difference when it comes to like different areas. So effectively, if you look at someone who put their money into a certain, it's ironic because you put the same amount of money studying stuff, right? Pretty much the same, give or take a few $1,000s, but and the output you get from it is largely diverse depending on what you chose, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I mean, Silicon Valley salaries are you know I think they start, for computer science, I think they start way over $100,000.
Okay.
I think. Yeah, I'm a little unacquainted now with like starting salaries, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it starts if you're like a CS major or something. If you probably have like 1 or 2 years of experience, you can expect like 120, probably 130. I don't know, something around that probably, or at least 100. I think most people in Silicon Valley who are especially CS majors. I hardly know anyone who kind of get paid less than 100. And the interesting thing is a lot of and I probably am selling Silicon Valley a little more here for a second, but I kind of want to make sure that people understand the different types of pay components, right? There's the base, and then there's the stock. So you get stock in the company, and if the company is not public when they exit, right, which is either if they go an IPO or if they get acquired, that stock component turns into monetary value. Now, if it's IPO, obviously you vest and you get to sell the stock in the stock market. So the salary ranges that I just mentioned are base only. On top of that, you have like all the stock and stuff like that. I know one. So here's the beauty of working for a startup, right? I know a colleague of mine from Lyft. He joined Lyft like way ago when Lyft was like super tiny. I think he was like the first few employees there, and I think he was among the first like 50 or something like that. And he in the IPO he walked out with millions 7 years later. So yeah, so it majorly depends on how successful the company is and stuff like that. But if you don't focus solely on Silicon Valley companies or like these big established companies, if you look at small businesses and stuff like that, which is where a lot of people like end up going, there is still a base component. There's bonuses and stuff like that. There might not be stock and things like that. And even then, I think like the going rate for H1B is $60,000. So anything below $60,000 cannot, like, it doesn't become necessarily eligible for an H1B. But I think the starting ranges are pretty much above that. So I think anyone with good capabilities should expect at least like 80, 90, something like that.
Interesting. So there's one interesting question that has come up. You know, how to decide between MS and a PhD? You should go for MS or you should go for like a PhD directly. So, what's your thoughts on that?
I think the easiest litmus test over there is uh, do you want to get into long-term research, right? Or do you want to get into an industry which is more implementation based? Do you want to become a very specific expert on a certain topic without caring for the broader scheme of things, right? And all these questions, answering all these questions sort of drive you to answering that broader question. For example, when I came to the US, I kind of was borderline, like, should I actually continue on to do a PhD and stuff like that? But by the end of my master's program, it was very clear to me that I didn't want to do a PhD. The reason being, I'm a kind of person who likes to be a little more holistic at a little more sort of broader level, and not become like a super specialist in one thing and then go a mile deep into that and become like a specialist in that. I feel motivated at work every day, being a little more holistic. But that's not the same with everyone. Some people just want to be a specialist at that one thing and do that awesomely, right? And then we have seen a lot examples of a lot of people do that. And PhD is a great route for such people. But if you want to be a little holistic, not only MS is a great route, it also matters what courses you choose in MS, right? How broad you keep that, how much exposure you gain. But at the end of the day, it's not just grad school. It's about everything you do, starting from undergrad, grad school, and also like when you start working. Grad
Exactly.
school
I
is
think
not the answer to questions. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think one of the summarized topic that I would pick from this conversation, it boils down to the profile building, which is subconsciously ignored when we are there in the, BTech or BCom or BSc. Those 3 or 4 years of your college are going to set the foundation of how, broader you can go. Even if you miss certain bus, it's kind of good to have those early extra efforts put in, right? So, Simon, just like pointers, not much in depth. What are the few pointers that you want to give to the undergrads, or the high school students who are going to the in an undergrad scenario? What they can do, or they can probably should look at, in those 3 to 4 years of their career, so that the next cycle would become much better.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought this up, because it's a good segue into talking about like what I'm currently working on to help such folks, right?
Yeah.
But in general, I'd say stay super active. Look at all opportunities around you, right? Look at all research-ish opportunities, no matter how naive it is, no matter how like seemingly obvious it is, right? Or just jump in and grab it, right? Just grab the opportunities, just do those things. And also look at like all these competition, look at all these other things, no matter what scale it is at, because you start developing that art of participating and then possibly winning, and then it takes time. So the biggest asset you have on your side is time right now, right? So if you are in high school, or if you are in early undergrad, or like even undergrad, you have, and if you're planning to like go to grad school, right, you have, I don't know, like you have at least 2 years, maybe 6 years ahead of you. This is awesome time to be doing like great stuff if you have the right guidance about like what to do, right? If there's someone to tell you like exactly what you need to do to go step by step to build your profile, to then sort of qualify for an Einstein Visa kind of level, because just jobs is not sufficient. You need to also secure yourself from an immigration standpoint, right? Because you get a job and then you run out of visa, you have to leave anyway. It's equal to like not having a job in the first place, except for that duration. So yeah, so it's about being strategic and deliberate. It's not about beating the system or anything like that. It's about being deliberately and legitimately building your profile that makes you qualify.
Interesting. So,
Yeah.
before we wrap up the session, I must tell all the users that Simon is working on something really super interesting as a course for educating a lot of masses so that they can prepare themselves for Einstein Visa kind of an opportunity. Or at least if you know don't get Einstein Visa, in the worst case scenario, you can definitely build a very, very strong profile, which would definitely help you with your jobs and your admissions and your careers. So definitely, Simon, if you can probably, do you have the link ready? Can we share it across with the students?
Yeah. So should I put it in the chat, or I can just read it out and you can display it on the screen
Uh,
probably?
it's simon.mikejabi.com, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let me just copy that. I have it, I think. I'll just, so everyone who is there, just go to this site and just subscribe to it. So the course is going to be out very soon, I believe. So, and then we have some special, um, I would say discounts kind of a thing for Indian audience. We try to, I would say, take into consideration the purchasing power parity and kind of made it more affordable for masses in India to go for it. But definitely, this course is going to add a lot of value if you are early in your career and you want to build a good profile and you want to get such kind of visa opportunities in your career. So, last a couple of questions before we wrap this up. I think we're almost at the end of the session. So, someone has asked about, what's the cost structure look like for when you went to US for your course, like Masters in Control Systems? What's the usual cost structure looks like?
So I think the total cost of education, it's going up every year, but I think it's in the ballpark of like $40,000, if you don't have any other type of funding, right, like a teaching assistantship or research, or anything like that, that gives you a fee waiver or scholarship. It was close to $40,000 if someone went like that to ASU, but I'm talking like 5 years ago. So I would say it's like around 45 or probably $50,000 now. And I
Absolutely.
know other places that are like more expensive, like I think USC, University of Southern California's private schools are like even more expensive. But a lot of my friends like find it like worth it going there anyway. And I'd say at the end of the day, it comes down to, I don't think the university or the school necessarily matters, especially in your early career. So I think if you build a good enough profile to compensate for that, you should be pretty well set. There are some companies though, and unfortunately, that look for like the MITs and Stanfords and stuff like that. But when it comes to whether you go to ASU or USC or some other sort of school that are not MIT or Stanford, I think you should be pretty much treated the same across the board.
Interesting. I think this is to the end of the session, and I think a lot of Q&A
Yeah.
has happened.
So
And
I'd like to just reiterate about the course. So yeah, basically this is something that I'm putting together based on my journey and my experiences, a lot of which I did, a lot of which I wish I did, so I can sort of educate people on what I missed out on as well, that they can do. So feel free to and we have a landing page now, so feel free to go ahead and put your name and email there, and you'll get a good bunch of bonuses as like early signups, and we'll be the first you'll be the first to know once this is released really soon. So it is Simon, like my first name, SAIMAN .MYKAJABI, my Kajabi, simon.mykajabi.com. So feel free to go there, put your name and email. Also connect with me, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, posting such stuff. So yeah, I really look forward to helping a lot of folks.
sure. Just to add to the audience, I'm going to email Simon's profile and a lot of details about the course in the next emailer. So stay tuned to the email. We're going to send an email about what we talked in this today's webinar, so that you have still pointers to take away. And at the same time, Simon's course is coming up, so you should definitely check that out very soon. And we're going to post Simon's social media so that you can always add him and follow him about his updates. So I think this is it. And thank you, audience. I think you're a lovely audience. You stayed here for a long time. It's been 1 hour. And thank you, Simon, for coming out and making this a very special moment. So talking about the very special moment, tomorrow, 19th and 20th is the most special moment for all the study abroad aspirants who are planning to go abroad, going for their higher education, or looking where to study, what to study, how to study, and tons of questions, you might have. Today, Simon has cleared a lot of questions. There are more questions that might come in for Europe, Australia, UK, and that's something you're going to get answered tomorrow. So 19th and 20th, stay tuned. You would get to subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Facebook, so you directly get a notification when we are going live. We are going live sharp 9 a.m. tomorrow. It's going to be 9 to 4. It's going to be a marathon. So probably grab your popcorns and stay there on the call. Okay, thank you, Simon. Thanks, everyone. We end the session today. Thanks for the time.
See ya. Bye.
So yes, we came to the end of this session, and now I'm going to share with you a little bit about a gist of what tomorrow and day after tomorrow is going to be. It is going to be India's largest study abroad conference, and we have tons of amazing speakers like Simon, and we have Erasmus scholar, Chevening scholar, and many other speakers that you really wanted to talk to get some guidance. So yes, we are at the end of the session, and if you have any questions or any comments, you can go to the video and you can comment there. We will definitely going to answer them. And lastly, as I promised, I'm going to stream you about the Dream Big Scholarship. Okay, good night. tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't forget. And go to our YouTube, subscribe that, hit the bell icon so that tomorrow you don't miss the live video. And again, word of caution, these videos may not be live after a couple of days of the conference. So we're gonna take down the video for sure. So you have to attend tomorrow and day after tomorrow. There is no delays on that.